Am I the jerk for refusing to talk about dieting with my partner? I, a 19-year-old female, have been arguing recently with my 19-year-old male boyfriend because of a recent lifestyle change he's made. He has started trying to improve himself and has been talking very often to me about dieting, calories, and exercise. By often, I mean pretty much every single time we talk to each other, he brings it up at least once. I used to have an eating disorder, and the topic of dieting and calories can be a hard one for me. He has been calorie counting everything in front of me, and the frequency with which we talk about it has really set me off. I feel extremely self-conscious about myself, and every conversation we have makes me feel like I need to change, especially when he points out things he hates and is trying to change on his own body that are on mine too. We have been having other relationship problems as well. I feel like he's been extremely dismissive of me, talks over me, and is self-centered. He thinks that I am not being supportive of him, that I bring up the past too much in arguments, and that I am being selfish and trying to drag him down. It's not that I don't want him to improve, but rather that it's upsetting me talking about it all the time. I proposed a compromise where I try different ways to be supportive of him and be better at actively listening in conversations about it. In turn, he would talk about it a little less frequently so as not to drag down my mental health as well in the process. He said that my solution would be compromising his health and that his new lifestyle is important to him. He believes he should be able to talk about it because it's not about me. He thinks I am being selfish by making it about me, but I also have the same idea about him because, in the past, I've often felt like things are about him. He has been ignoring me for the last several days. He said I've brought his mental health down, and I feel like all we've done is argue. I feel like it's starting to run a lot deeper than just about dieting, but it's the main thing that's sparking this. To me, this is a stupid hill for us to die on, so I want some neutral opinions. Am I the asshole? You acted correctly. If he refuses to compromise and is actively engaging in behaviors that you have expressed are triggering, that's honestly a pretty big red flag. His lack of respect for your feelings is not just a stupid hill to die on. Absolutely die on this hill, and if you won't do better, find someone who will. Am I the jerk for not participating in activities on a vacation with my partner's family? I, a 21-year-old female, was on a trip with my 23-year-old boyfriend's family. We live in Australia and set off to go to Fiji. Before we flew to Fiji, we first had to fly to Sydney and stay there for a day. Before we left for the airport, my boyfriend wanted to share my suitcase and told me at the very last minute. He took out some of my packed items, including the only jacket I had, arguing about why I would need a jacket. His brother's girlfriend was just recovering from a cold. We landed in Sydney, and it was pouring rain. Even though it was summer, the weather was around 15 degrees Celsius, which is very cold for us coming from Melbourne. All I had were short-sleeve shirts and shorts. The next day, we arrived in Fiji, settled in, and stayed on a separate island from the mainland, away from stores. We relaxed the first day, but I noticed my throat was starting to get a bit irritated. I thought it would just be a sore throat. Luckily, the girlfriend had throat lozenges, so I thought it would be over quickly. I was wrong. The next day, I woke up with a full-on fever. Not only was my throat sore, but my nose was constantly dripping. I was coughing continuously, and I felt nauseous. I did not know if I had COVID-19 or not because I did not have access to a test. Physically, I could not cope with doing anything. At first, my boyfriend felt bad for me. I told him not to let my sickness get in the way of doing activities like snorkeling, jet skiing, and basket making. Soon, my boyfriend's mother eventually got sick, and so did his father. I would occasionally come out of our hut to eat or socialize with his family because I would get lonely, but I still felt terrible inside and very sad. My boyfriend's family was very understanding and tried to get pharmaceuticals to help me feel better. After days of feeling miserable, there was one night after dinner when the hosts wanted to play some games that required a lot of physical movement, mostly running around. Although it looked fun, I was too weak to participate. However, my boyfriend kept pushing me to do it, and I had to explain many times that I could not. I did not do it. I was watching my boyfriend, his siblings, and other families play the games. I was happy because it was fun to watch. As the night was ending and we went into our hut, my boyfriend had a full-on fit and yelled at me for ruining our vacation. He said I should be grateful that his family took me on their vacation and blamed me for being sick and not enjoying my first time out of the country. Am I the asshole? You have done nothing wrong. It's not your fault you got sick, and it's definitely unfair to blame you for it. Your BF needs to grow up and show more respect, especially since unpacking your suitcase without asking is a huge red flag. This kind of treatment isn't how you treat someone you care about, especially when they're already suffering from illness. Would I be the asshole if I ask a special needs customer to stop coming to my store? I, a 34-year-old female, work in a higher-end part of town in a specialty boutique-style store. I am currently 7 months pregnant and the only employee. I maintain a healthy relationship with everybody in town, other stores, and even our competitors. I want everyone to feel safe, accepted, and welcome. There is one gentleman who walks through the town and visits some of the stores on his way to work. He has high-functioning autism. He can drive, has a job, and has a master's degree. I recently told him that I was pregnant so that he could prepare for my leave for maternity. I let him touch my belly that day. He has been in every single day since, almost 3 weeks, to try to touch my belly to feel the baby. The issue is I don't like to be touched. I also don't like people coming up behind me. I have complex PTSD, and people behind me are one of my triggers. Also, being the only employee, I can't often stop. I have expressed to him many times that I cannot stop every day to let him touch my belly. He has recently taken it upon himself to walk behind me, even while I'm with other customers, to touch my belly. I told him that was not okay. He didn't come in for 2 days, and when he did a few days later, he tried to touch my belly, but he asked, so I said fine. However, he tried lifting my shirt so he could touch my bare skin, and I snapped and said absolutely not. He came back in the next day and walked straight towards me, trying to feel my belly too, which I told him we cannot do anymore. I said, "You may not come in to touch my belly. It is tourist season, and I am far too busy, and I do not like this." Today he tried coming in again, and I'm contemplating just telling him he's not allowed in my store anymore. He never buys anything and mostly browses anyway. I understand that some people do not have the same concept of personal space. However, I do not believe that that is an excuse, as I told him many times in a way he would understand that it was not okay. So would I be the asshole for kicking him out? I think you are not in the wrong here. This has nothing to do with him being autistic and everything to do with him not understanding boundaries. If he has a master's degree and a job, he knows what he's doing, and he's escalating his behavior because there are no consequences. Honestly, it's time to have a chat with your local PD and have them speak to him. Am I the jerk for replacing my no in my wedding because she refused to buy her dress? I'm getting married in September, and all of my bridesmaids and I went dress shopping a couple of months ago. We are all in our mid-20s, employed, with no children. My wedding is out of town for my maid of honor and a couple of other bridesmaids, but I'm getting a hotel room for all out-of-town bridesmaids for the wedding. I've known my maid of honor since 5th grade, and we were best friends all through school. I moved away for college, and we drifted apart, but I'd see her every time I came home. The dress shopping trip was out of town, so I paid for the 2 hotel rooms while we were there, and I drove. My mom brought my maid of honor and a couple of other bridesmaids since they still live in my hometown. My only requirements for the dresses were that they had to be a specific blue color and not made of satin material. We spent the whole afternoon trying on dresses, and everyone found one they liked, including my maid of honor. I've been told she picked out a $350 dress when most of my other bridesmaids had dresses in the $100, $150 range. The next day was spent relaxing at the pool, where my maid of honor began complaining to one of my other bridesmaids about having to pay for her dress. She said it was my wedding, and if I wanted a specific dress for them to wear, I should pay for it. She also mentioned that I didn't pay for the bridesmaid dress when I was in her wedding. She got married at 18, and we wore old prom dresses we already had. My bridesmaid told her I was being pretty reasonable with my request, and that she could get any dress she wanted within her budget. My maid of honor disagreed, and the bridesmaid shrugged her off but told me about it later. A month later, my maid of honor called me and asked me to buy her dress for her. I told her it wouldn't be fair if I bought her dress and no one else, and I couldn't afford to buy everyone's dress. She said she is the maid of honor and that everyone would understand it was a privilege she got. I disagreed and our argument got a little heated. It ended with me saying if she could not get the dress, she couldn't be in the wedding, and I wasn't budging on this. She hung up on me. Her mom has since called me, saying I'm being very rude for not doing this one thing for her so she can be there on my big day, and that I don't understand what it's like to not have money for things. I told her I have struggled before too and understand, but I'm not paying for the dress because it wouldn't be fair to all of the other bridesmaids. I've since made one of my other bridesmaids who has helped with all of the planning, my maid of honor. I've told my ex-maid of honor she is still invited and sent her an invitation, but some family members are telling me I should have just paid for the dress. I know my ex-maid of honor is tight on money, but she's known she was going to be in my wedding for nearly 2 years at this point, so I thought she would set aside money for it. Am I the asshole for not paying for her dress? You are not the problem. It wouldn't be fair to the other bridesmaids if you paid for her dress and not theirs, especially when she picked a $350 dress while everyone else chose dresses in the $100, $150 range. If she truly wanted to be in your wedding, she could have saved up over time. Her complaining to others instead of discussing it with you directly suggests she might not be struggling with money, but just didn't want to buy the dress. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's wife that we can't all have rich parents like her and her siblings? My brother Nicky, a 25-year-old male, is married to Liza, a 24-year-old female. They were at my parents' house on Sunday for dinner, and Liza really annoyed me. This is not new, and I said something in anger that might make me the antagonist. Liza has a wealthy family. They paid for her and her siblings' college expenses in full. They paid for Nicky and Liza's house. They paid for their wedding. They are also paying for one of their sons' weddings this summer. Liza has always been very open about this. She never hid the fact she came from money and was never shy about saying her parents pay for so much for her and her siblings. Liza does not understand that not everyone is as lucky. I am a 19-year-old female, work full-time, and still live with my parents. We could not afford college. I did not get the grades for a scholarship. I struggled enough through school that getting into massive debt for college when I could end up flunking seemed like a bad move for me. So I focused on working and applied for a couple of training programs close to my parents' house to try to do better without risking debt for nothing. Liza looks down on me for living with my parents still and for not going to college. On Sunday, she talked about how all her siblings attended college, how 3 of them are still in college, living there, and doing just fine. She boasted about how they will be able to buy houses right out of college and how even she and my brother could do it. My parents said politely that not everyone can do all that. But then she talked about being 19 and not in college or living on my own, and how I should really try much harder. I snapped at that moment and told her that we cannot all have rich parents who can afford to pay our ways through college, for our weddings, and for our houses. I told her my parents did not have that kind of money, and neither did I, so we were doing our best in this difficult economy. Liza told me I am just lazy and making excuses, and she stormed out. Nicky left a while later and he was pretty quiet. Liza used his phone to send me 30 texts 3 days later, demanding I apologize and tearing me a new one for not doing it without being told. I know it was her because she texts in a very specific way. Am I the antagonist? Liza had no right to judge you or voice her opinion about your life choices, especially when you're working full-time and looking for opportunities to better yourself. College isn't for everyone and can lead to significant debt, and it's not uncommon for 19-year-olds to live with their parents in this economy. She clearly has a very entitled perspective, and if anyone should apologize, it should be Liza for her nasty comments. Kudos to you for realizing college may not be the right path for you and for trying to figure out your own way. I got into an argument with my mother today and I ended up snapping at her. She was nagging me about something trivial and I just couldn't handle it anymore. I know I shouldn't have raised my voice, but I was feeling really frustrated. Now she's upset with me and I'm wondering if I overreacted. Am I the jerk? Here's the edited version of your text. I am a 36-year-old male married to a 39-year-old female. I also have a 39-year-old sister. We have been together for 9 years and married for 6 of them. I have a somewhat unique last name. My mother has had an obsession with passing on the family name, and it predates me meeting my wife. Originally, when dating, my mother was kind to my wife. However, as soon as we got married, she started exhibiting typical mother-in-law behavior. She likely blames my wife for us living in a different state, even though it was a mutual decision. We currently have a 16-month-old daughter, whom my mother has seen twice. When the news dropped that she was a girl, my mother's subtle disappointment was apparent. We recently found out we were pregnant with baby number 2, and before even knowing the gender, my mother was already saying things like, "Hope it's a boy," and "Gotta pass on the family name." Every time she mentioned it, I made snarky comments, implying that it doesn't matter. I began thinking about how terrible it is to view my daughter as a disappointment just because she can't pass on the last name. I then thought of my sister and how she might have felt being the firstborn and probably disappointing my mother by being born female. A couple of weeks ago, we found out baby number 2 is a boy. We hesitated to tell my family because we knew what my mother would say. We decided to release the information through Facebook. Predictably, my mother commented, praising the fact that it was a boy and passing on the family name. When I saw this comment, I lost it. I texted her immediately, asking, "Am I a duke? Do we have some land with a castle in Wales that I need to be aware of?" She responded with, "What?" So I sent her a screenshot of her Facebook comment and replied, "I sure hope my sister was never made to feel less than because she couldn't pass on the family name. It doesn't matter, but I'm certainly not going to allow my daughter to feel lesser because she's a girl." So now I'm being direct. This is a rude and inappropriate thing to say. I love you. Good night, she responded by gaslighting me and avoiding any responsibility or accountability. It's been 3 days now, and I haven't said anything to her. But am I the asshole? You handled things appropriately. You know, the baby doesn't need to be named after the father. It's tradition, but not law. On the birth certificate, any name can be listed, and that becomes the boy's legal name unless he later goes to court to change it. It seems pretty unfair to value a child based on something as mundane as carrying on a family name. Maybe it's time to focus more on being supportive and loving grandparents instead. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.